Buddy. So today is the first official Sunday science sessions. Originally supposed to start at 7 o'clock. I'm going to give everybody a quick update and let you know where we're going to go from here, and then we're going to get right into it. For starters, this was supposed to happen a couple of months ago. I've had a lot of different things happen, and it's been sort of back to back with family issues,
I've had
etc.
a lot of different things
That's what I
happen,
was waiting on.
and
Excuse me
it's
one
been
second here.
sort of back to back.
I have a lag with my system. There we go. Um, I just got all this stuff set up and then getting it organized. So as I said, this is the first official show. Um, it was supposed to be done months ago. There's been a lot of things that have happened. I uh, I finally got this sorted and was getting ready to go live with one of my first shows, and then it was chaos. Moving on from that, this will be the first official show. I did a test last night. I just wanted to make sure that I got the system down and figured out where everything was at, and I'm just going to keep it posted if anybody wants to check it out. It's like 10 minutes. It was just literally almost nothing. I talk a little bit about Weinstein, um, but some of this will tie into that as well. Um, for the first intro to all of this. A lot of you know that I've put out a book on it, etc. I've claimed to solve the TOE equation. I put out YouTube videos on this kind of thing. I want to do a normal, regular educational thing like this where we can do a weekly thing and actually communicate with each other and hopefully make some progress in the world of science in general. I also talk politics and a lot of stuff like that too, so we'll get into it as well. For starters, philosophy. I want to stress the importance of philosophy in science, politics, anywhere really, but starting with science. You have Sir Isaac Newton. Some people know this, some people don't. His degree was in philosophy and mathematics. They did multiple degrees back then, so it was all just one, but he had a degree in philosophy. This is beyond relevant. This showed the logical side with the mathematics, and it also shows the philosophical side as far as the asking questions why, the objective lens, the abstract view of things, being able to connect the dots across fields and stuff like that. So he as far as I'm concerned, philosophy becomes paramount because of Sir Isaac Newton, and a lot of people don't feel the same way, and that's fine. Um, but when you start getting into different philosophies and different philosophers, a second thing to point out is something I try to stress with Jonathan Nash outside of philosophy, because I'm a student of philosophy. Jonathan Nash was a terrible human being. Period. He was a great mathematician. That was what you had with him. You have to separate the person from the actual work that they did. And when it comes to Jonathan Nash, the same applies with different people in philosophy. You have to separate the philosopher from the philosophy. And in Nash's case, yes, he was a schizophrenic. There's no denying that. He had problems. But there is also the obvious he abandoned that woman in the first child that he had that's in the movie A Beautiful Mind that Russell Crowe stars in. That movie was boycotted because of how terribly they represented the true Jonathan Nash. They tried to make him out to be a good guy. He was not. And he actually abandoned her and that child. So I don't respect the movie because of that. I still recommend seeing it because it's a good movie. But Jonathan Nash, mathematician, separate the man from the work. And then you get into philosophy. Um, oh dear God, I'm gonna have to start hiding logos or something since I'm live. Um, then you get into philosophy with Diogenes is a great place to start because you can relate him to so many other things and compare and contrast with him. So Diogenes, some of you know this, he had one of the greatest moments in philosophy where he stood before the emperor, and that emperor was Alexander the Great. so uh, the emperor basically offers Diogenes anything his heart desires. You know, what do you want? He's supposed to be a minimalist. And he says, what do you want? You can have anything you want. You want women, you want fame, you want money. You can have it. Name your price. And Diogenes looks back and says, I want you to get out of my sunlight. That is one of the greatest philosophical moments in history because he not only uh, was the only man to ask Alexander the Great to move and succeed, but he also lived up to his philosophy of minimalism. There's nothing you can offer me. I don't want it. And that's why I respect Diogenes. Now, when you compare it to other people, understand that Marcus Aurelius is a great example of Stoicism. Hey, what's going on? Marcus Aurelius is a great example of Stoicism. And at the same time, Stoicism can include minimalism. These are all tools in the toolbox. Philosophy is not a one off thing. There's not a this one's right, that one's wrong sort of stuff. You have the philosophical toolbox, philosophy, and each one of these philosophies has a time and a place where it's necessary and relevant. When it comes to minimalism, a Stoic might be a minimalist. They might take part in something like Diogenes did, but they are not going to be a minimalist all the time. And so, just so you understand the separation here, I want you to understand why I separate the man from the work, and I compare and contrast these philosophies. It's very crucial with science because you have to be able to understand, and even in politics, you have to be able to compare and contrast. Whether you're dealing with chemistry or biology or this, that, and the other, you have to be able to compare it to other fields. And that's sort of what philosophy is. It's comparing geometry to biology. They're all, scientific, but they're different. Just like these are all philosophies, but they're different. And when you get into specifically Diogenes, the minimalism was forced onto him. You've got to know that in advance. It was absolutely forced onto him. He and his family had their entire family's wealth stripped of them. And it's because I don't know who these people are. What? Okay. Hey, Papa. So these people had their family wealth stripped of them, Diogenes and his family, and it was because they ended up rigging the scales. That's actually where that term comes from. One of the places that terms comes from is because they operated a grain mill of some type, and they were rigging scales in order to rip people off. And when they did this, they had all their money, everything taken from them. Well, that's why Diogenes ended up being on the path that he was. He was forced into minimalism. He just accepted it. He just wore it as a badge of honor. And as he did that, he proved himself in the minimalism. He proved his philosophy. And so it's important to understand how these guys got to where they were. So when you compare him to somebody like Marcus Aurelius, the reason why I respect Diogenes more than I respect Marcus Aurelius, even though I see myself as more of a Stoic than I ever would a minimalist, is because Marcus Aurelius was not actually the Stoic he's made out to be. He he was raised in a palace. His grandfather or his uncle was the emperor or something like that. He married his cousin. And so when it comes to Marcus Aurelius, the idea that he was this great guy and this great mantra for Stoicism, he actually did not ever have to live up to it or prove it. It was because he was so privileged, he was so fortunate that he did not have to struggle. And he ended up promoting some of these concepts like wear your struggles with pride, things like that, which is great. Those are great principles of Stoicism, but he was the wrong guy to be preaching it, period. And I just don't understand the respect for Marcus Aurelius as much as I respect Stoicism, which gets more credited towards Socrates, Plato, things like that. And even with Plato, to stress the importance of philosophy with this, Plato came up with Platoan mathematics. That's a thing, trying to prove existence outside of existence. And so with all these different guys, I mean, you're looking at an emperor, with Marcus Aurelius, the last of the five great emperors, all the way to Diogenes, who is this dog. That's his nickname. The contrast there, that proves something about philosophy, that none of them are the same, and that the people are all going to provide something different to the philosophy from their own individual lives. And so with Marcus Aurelius, the Stoicism, he was great for promoting Stoicism. He was not the greatest Stoic. He really did. He never had to struggle like these other guys. He never had to prove it. Where Diogenes, on the other hand, in contrast, he had to prove his minimalism, and then was even given an opportunity to spit in the face of it and refused to do so. And so, when you end up comparing and contrasting these philosophies and compare the philosophers as well to see where they're coming from, then you get to somebody like Voltaire with existentialism. Um, Existentialism is not what people think it is when they bring it up a lot of the time. There's a lot of people that think existentialism is just talking about yourself in the third person or something like the way he wrote it in the book. That's not explicitly what it is. It's about objectivity and looking at your own life outside looking in and trying to objectively identify what things are. So somebody here recently made a post I saw about how and they misattributed it to someone else, but they were trying to present the idea of existentialism where Voltaire would say, "What makes a hat a hat?" And you'd say, "Well, I wear it on my head." And then he'd put a book on his head and say, "Okay, so this is a hat now." That's He was trying to properly identify. And the reason for this was so much power was derivative of the church. It was coming from the church. And the law of the land at that time in Europe was that what the church said goes because they were the church. And so he really was challenging what is right, trying to find, get people to establish what is correct, not authority for authority's sake. And that was what Voltaire was up against. Now there's all kinds of history with him as well, where he rigged a government lottery is the way it's worded. So they had the way that people established wealth back then, a lot of it was land grab. It was land wealth and land lottery. And so with Voltaire, what he did was he uh he actually got some friends, some rich friends, and they bought tons of tickets for land and stacked the deck. This was the same thing that the other guys had been doing. They just basically stacked the deck better. And so they ended up winning all of these land grabs. And when they did, they ended up having more wealth because of it, etc. And one of them went on to be some sort of a doctor inventor and invented some stuff with his money. And Voltaire, he ended up making his money traveling or spending his money traveling around Europe, challenging aristocracy and challenging the stranglehold of the church over politics, where people just you weren't allowed to have an opinion that was against the church, and the church was always right. He was Existentialism was more about that. It was more about objectivity and defining what is correct. That's existentialism. It really is truly objectivity. It's just an objective lens. So when you look at all these different philosophies, you have a Stoic philosophy, which is just about wearing your struggles. Wise man endures a struggle and doesn't add to them, and things like that. It's more about maintaining a certain composure with life, where Voltaire is about objectively understanding what life is and what is happening. Then minimalism is about whatever's happening, just try to use the least you can. Try to get by with the least that you can. It's There is no correct philosophy because of this. They all have different principles at play, and you can dance around with all of them. You have to understand that these are just about understanding life. It's just about how to live life. It is separate a religious study, where religion tries to establish so much about who made us and why. Uh, I believe philosophy tries to help us deal with the world through the lens of, okay, we're here. What should I do? It's not about um, God as much with philosophy, and they all tie together. Philosophy, religion, science, these things all overlap, and they have intersections and such. But philosophy itself is not religion for a reason. It truly is beyond the idea of where did who created us, and why are we here, what are we here for. Philosophy is just trying to help you deal with the world around you. And I get it that there are some more philosophy-based religions and more it gets complex, it gets convoluted, and then you have sects and subsects, and it's insane trying to keep up with all of it. Um, but that's how important philosophy is in the world of science. That even the philosophers themselves, some of them were scientists, and even the scientists, some of them were philosophers, and some of them were religious, and some of them weren't. Some of them were political, and some of them weren't. So you really have to. You really have to understand where these guys come from to figure out what their position actually is and how they got to where they were and why they present this specific aspect of stoicism. In the case of Marcus Aurelius, this is going to sound terrible if you want to understand how deep philosophy is for me. This is going to sound terrible for some people. Marcus Aurelius is considered the last of the five good emperors. I would argue he was the last for a reason, and that things got pretty bad after he was in charge. Uh, his stoicism, the things that he preached, it was more about maybe trying to keep the population in line, more about trying to tell people, hey, where your struggles with pride, don't revolt. Like be happy that you're tougher now because everything that happened to you. Like he's trying to preach this stuff, but at the entire time, Rome is getting ready to go to shit. He's considered the last of the five good emperors. So uh, you have to understand these people to understand, in his case, where the Stoicism came from. In other cases, where the philosophy comes from. You get to uh, things like Diogenes as compared to try to get away from philosophy and maybe how can you apply these sorts of things. Well, Diogenes in his moment before the emperor, they try to use this as a comparison with Pope Leo the First and Attila the Hun, even. And if you don't know some of this, you wouldn't get it. And Pope Leo the First and Attila the Hun is a completely different situation. It it was not the same as Diogenes, for one. For two, it is completely blown out of proportion. So the Catholic Church, what they did was they took Pope Leo the First and they said, hey, we're going to use this as really good propaganda. Like we're going to take this and make it, blow it way out of proportion, twist it and contort it, and use it to make Catholicism look good. Because the cold hard truth is, I hate to tell you this, a few happy words about God were not enough to scare off an Attila the Hun. That's never what occurred. This was actually a 3-year situation, and this was from about 450 AD to about 453 AD. In 450 AD, some people don't know who this person is. It's Honoria. She's the reason for what happened with Pope Leo the First and Attila the Hun. Honoria actually sent a letter to Attila the Hun. She was a Roman princess, and she tells him that she's offering herself as a bride to this guy. This obviously upsets Rome, but she offers herself as a bride and starts complaining about Rome and this and that and offering him things. Well, Attila the Hun was involved in some war at the time, so he could not just could not get there immediately. I mean, this wasn't something that was going to happen, and so when he gets through with the wars, you're talking about the letters sent somewhere in 450 AD. By 452 AD, he shows up, and he doesn't show up there to conquer Rome. Like, that's not why Attila the Hun showed up. He showed up with a substantial amount of people, but he was there to collect a bride. The woman that had offered herself as a bride, Honoria. What he didn't know was that during the 2 years he was out fighting wars, by the time he made it to Rome, Honoria had already been offered off to someone else, married off to someone else rather, and either killed or held captive in a cave somewhere. I mean, that's where her story ends. That's it for Honoria. And so when Attila the Hun shows up in 452, well after this, Rome doesn't know how weak he is in that particular moment, and because of famine and disease and all the war and all, like he'd been dealing with some stuff. But by the time he shows up, Pope Leo the First basically comes out to meet him to discuss what happened. This wasn't a him scaring off the warriors. They weren't there to conquer Rome. That wasn't why he showed up. And so Pope Leo the First tells him what happened. And there's no real record of what was spoken between them, and that's why it gets manipulated into a Catholic fairy tale. I mean, there's no record of this, awesome moment between Pope Leo the First and Attila the Hun where he said these things. They don't have that. Instead, this is what actually occurs. After the meeting with Pope Leo the First, Attila the Hun goes back home, and he decides that he's going to raise an army to go attack Eastern Rome. So he obviously wasn't pushed away by Pope Leo the First. Pope Leo the First didn't scare him. And so he starts building the army, and then he decides to marry a Germanic princess, pagan Germanic princess. They hate Rome. And so his entire goal, Attila the Hun's entire goal here is to put together the Germanic tribes with his army, help replenish his forces, and then go right back after Rome. And so Pope Leo the First didn't scare Attila the Hun away. He just maybe bought him a few months, something like that. But when Attila the Hun went home, he died the same as Alexander the Great. Coincidentally enough, they say that it was either he was poisoned or he died of alcohol poisoning. So here Attila the Hun is on his wedding night with a Germanic princess to unite these Germanic tribes against Rome to go back and attack Eastern Rome, and he's either assassinated or dies. So whatever they try to tell you about Pope Leo the First and Attila the Hun and how he scared off Attila the Hun, that's not what occurred. That's not really what occurred. I see it pop up on all these Facebook groups and all these social media places. They tell you this little tidbit of something that happens, and it grossly neglects what actually occurred. If anything, Pope Leo the First pissed off Attila the Hun because he was literally coming back with a bigger army to try to eradicate them. I don't know where the fairy tale came from, but the point here is with philosophy. They try to compare this to Diogenes and Alexander the Great, where Diogenes, stood up to Alexander the Great. But Alexander the Great didn't come back and conquer Diogenes and ruin his entire world, which is what Attila the Hun was about to do to Rome. So you got to keep those things into consideration whenever you're dealing with philosophy and how they're applied and such. Beyond that, I want to address, I told everybody in the test stream last night I would address some of the stuff dealing with the physics and science community, etc. Weinstein. I am so torn. It's so terrible. It sucks. It really does. I get the UFO stuff, all of that, but this goes back even further. So you're talking 7-8 years ago, I was looking up Lawrence M. Krauss and his ties to Epstein and all this stuff. And I'm like, wow, like I had no idea Lawrence M. Krauss was tied to this and that. And he had accusations against him and he was going to have to go to court and all this stuff. I did not know. I was just a random dude into science. And so when I found out about Lawrence M. Krauss, I started looking in deeper to everybody. And then I find out that Neil deGrasse Tyson is at Ghislaine Maxwell's house parties in 2014. This was for Star Talk. This was over Waterworld and the Terramar Project. There were members of the UN there. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was there. So you had all kinds of these politicians and science guys that were at Ghislaine Maxwell's house party in 2015. I've put out literal video, like picture slides and stuff on social media all over the place. So everybody from, there were actors there and this, that, and the other, but the scientific community was very important because Epstein was not only doing the life longevity stuff, he was not only doing the science technology stuff. There was a project called Terramar. And this was nicknamed Waterworld. What they wanted to do was they wanted to get billions of dollars of investment, and they were going to the UN to look for support, mind you, to get an off-grid boating society Okay, an off-grid boating society out in international waters where national laws would not apply. All the people involved in pedophilia were trying to make their own water world, their own little boat island place out in international waters, and sell it as some eco-friendly utopia idea to like unite the world kind of thing that they were selling at the UN. You will have no idea how many people were involved in all this until here recently, and they're still trying to bury it. So RFK Jr. is at Ghislaine Maxwell's house parties all the way up to 2014, meeting with members of the UN in photos with them. Sitting there talking about Waterworld and the Terramar project. That's what everything was about. They had just done Star Talk was the name of the event, and so you had Neil deGrasse Tyson there. You had oh, I can't remember. Was the leader of Myanmar? Some big religious leader or something. Might have been a guy from Malaysia. I don't know, but they're all decked out and just their gold robes and other random stuff. It was ridiculous. Of course, Neil deGrasse. And in all fairness, let me say this: Neil deGrasse Tyson looked like Neil deGrasse Tyson. In a world with everybody dressing up in this and that, he looked exactly like he always looks. Props to him. In any environment, he is always Neil deGrasse Tyson, but he was still at a Ghislaine Maxwell house party. Okay, so this was the after party for Star Talk and all that. Again, the photos are on my X. I've put them out everywhere. So when I start looking into all these science guys and everything else, I then look into Dr. Cuckoo. And this is where I'm going to give Dr. Cuckoo a saving grace. He was tied to Clinton-ish, but not in the ways that I thought. So they did have a closed door meeting later that I'll discuss, but they ended up, Clinton he was in charge during the Cassini project. The Cassini project is very successful science project, sent the satellite out to another planet, could collect data, bring it back. Dr. Cuckoo was worried about it in the 90s because he was like, we're going to bring back a virus or something. It's going to end badly. Just don't do it. And I understand where he was coming from, but he was supposedly wrong. And this has been a complete total success. And so since he stood against Clinton and petitioned the president to not do this, I think he was busy trying to kiss the president's ass later, and I don't think he had anything to do. I haven't seen anything to tie Dr. Cuckoo directly to anything dealing with Epstein. He was just science guy dealing with science shit, and I'm not going to pretend to have a connection to Maxwell or Epstein with Dr. Cuckoo that I just don't have. But he was connected to Clinton through that and through other various science works where they had a closed door meeting in New York, but it was an NSA thing. It was normally open door. So it was high level science meeting where Clinton was a guest speaker, and they just made it closed door, usually open to the public. No media, no nothing. So it's hard to tell what was really going on with all that, other than Dr. Cuckoo had pissed off Bill Clinton at a certain point by petitioning against a big project that wound up being a success. Or Dr. Cuckoo was correct. Bill Clinton brought space worms back and we're all being infected by parasites. Either or, things are getting kind of crazy. So I'm willing to go 50-50. When you get past that, you get to a guy like Eric Weinstein. And why are these guys relevant, right? Why am I talking about them? Well, it's all about string theory, string field theory, the theory of everything, all of this stuff that I'm constantly talking about. These are the guys that were involved in all this stuff. And I want you to understand something. Some of the most advanced scientific minds who were talking about the kind of stuff that I talk about, they were dealing with the TOE equation. They were dealing with this kind of stuff. And so they were taken very seriously for a reason. And when it comes to Eric Weinstein, you now have a situation where Weinstein has openly stated that he's friends with Peter Thiel. This is where I have an issue. This is where I finally have an issue. So I've been talking about string field theory and how the work ties into this and that, and how string theory and string field theory are both valid. One is just an extrapolation of the other, etc. And how all of this expands and how the equation just turns into, it's like fractal math, how it expands and extrapolates how things function. And I try to give all these guys credit. I'm trying to talk to Eric Weinstein on X, and I was trying to reach out to him. Then I see he's tied to Peter Thiel. And I have been doing nothing but talking shit about Peter Thiel, Howard Lutnick, everybody, every single person that is in any way tied to Epstein. I am calling them out. I don't care. It's just this is going to be dealt with. I don't care if the nuclear bombs drop and Iran blows everybody up and America's blown everybody else up, and we're sitting here and I've got like 5 seconds of internet left before it's all over. I'm coming out and I'm saying Epstein didn't kill himself. We're coming for all the pedophiles. I don't care. Okay, it's irrelevant. There is nothing, no other line that can be crossed that is greater than what was crossed with the Epstein stuff. So Eric Weinstein said that he's friends with Peter Thiel, and he spoke well of Peter Thiel, and I don't know how to process that. I I am just so disappointed. It Peter Thiel was not only funding stuff. He's literally mentioned so many times and connected so many times. He was one of the first names mentioned publicly of being involved in doing bad things. And I know algorithms. I've got to watch my language with. I don't care. Like if I'm gonna slip up trying to censor myself on occasion, I really don't care. I'm not in this to make money, so I'm just in it for the love of the game. Uh, so when it comes to Peter Thiel, when Eric Weinstein starts speaking well of him, and I just can't do it. I can't back him anymore. I don't care. I started very simply with this. You had to separate the person or the philosophy from the philosopher. And in this case, I had to separate the pedophile or the friend of the pedophile or the this of the pedophile with the work that somebody did. And I understand that string field theory is great work, great concept as far as extrapolated from string theory. It's all appropriate, correct in many ways. I've done my due diligence and put out much work on it, but I will not work with Weinstein. I don't want to be anywhere near him. I can't stand that so many people. How hard was it to just avoid the creepy pedophile guy? How hard was it then to avoid the creepy pedophile guy after he got busted soliciting a minor for sex? How hard was it to avoid his wife after she was tied to it? I don't understand how so many scientists got caught up in this. It's a very creepy thing to me, and so I don't even know how to address Weinstein other than to say that he is now coming out talking about the UFO stuff. It needs to go in this way and that with it. And it just makes me think of the stuff they were talking about with Project Bluebeam when they were saying that everything was going to be a fake UFO, this or that, and that they're gonna. I forget where it started. It could be a real government program. That's fine, but they've been talking about Project Bluebeam and all this UFO stuff. I've got my own opinions in every way. I don't want to get into UFOs on here right now, but Weinstein is suddenly coming out talking about all the UFO stuff in the same week that he's coming out defending Peter Thiel's honor in many ways, and I just can't. I can't. So I'm not going to buy into the UFO discussion right now. I'm not going to allow the Epstein stuff to get buried in Iran war. And I'll say this too: people think that I'm crazy for some of the things that I do, but I pattern recognition. That's kind of my nature, and when it comes to the stuff I talk about online, I kept bringing up Nancy Guthrie for a reason. Um, I firmly believe that that was distractionary, but I don't think people realize the keyword search game that goes on online with some of this and why some of the profiles word things the way that they do online to make so much money. Just mentioning Nancy Guthrie got me like 1,000 views almost to me. It was just, oh, 1,000 people saw that. Oh, 1,000 people saw that. And I was just like, y'all really are distracting from the Epstein stuff with this. And so I always look for stuff like that to tie into my post. And it is related to what I'm talking about with Epstein or whatever. But I'm also trying to let people know when I find one, like because I'll get like 17 views on this comment, mention her name, get 8,000 views, and then on the next comment get seven or eight views. It's like, okay, there's obviously a keyword hit there, and so I try to put stuff like that out and let people know when I see it. Um, but anyway, uh, this Epstein stuff it's getting buried, and they're doing everything they can to just erase all of it and make it seem like it never happened. You've had CEOs resigning, you've had a Sultan resign, you've had all this stuff happen, and mostly due to Thomas Massey, Congressman Thomas Massey, and Ro Khanna. While the admin has said there are no files, there are files, there aren't any files, but if there were any files, then we didn't do anything. It's been nonstop, and they've just gone back and forth on their words so many times with it. Um, so you have to pay attention to where data comes from and why they're saying what they're saying. These are the reasons why I say philosophy is so important, because when dealing with politics or politicians, it's still all the same. They've all got a philosophy, they've all got a position, a stance, and they've all got a reason for being there. The only way you can combat it, the only way you can understand it, is to actually study it from a philosophical lens and actually use these tools in the toolbox and say, why are they the way that they are? And that's lacking in our society. They want everything fixed. They want people to be smart, and they want them to know better. But the effort is gone. The effort is just lost. They don't want to have these discussions about that. They don't want to have the deep discussions about why people are the way that they are and how you can fight against that. And so it all ends up being a Facebook post or an X post or something, and it's not a real fight anymore. Um, anyway, that is the reason why philosophy is paramount to science. It is paramount to everything. It is about understanding who people are, understanding what they're actually representing, understanding if it's even themselves that they're representing or if they're representing somebody else. That is the same in politics. It really is. It's the same exact stuff in politics. It's the same in science. When you get into science, there are mushrooms that you can eat that are right next to mushrooms that you can't eat that look identical. This is the same in science, it's the same in politics, same in philosophy. Philosophy has things that look similar but are different. You have to actually understand who Voltaire is, what existentialism is. You have to understand who Diogenes was, what minimalism is, who Marcus Aurelius was, what Stoicism was or is, or why Socrates, why Plato, why this. You have to study these things to understand them. The Facebook post, the social media world that we're living in, with people just sharing a thing, it's only so beneficial. It gets some of the information out, which I like, but it does not grant anybody the depth to actually discuss any of it. But yes, philosophy is paramount to everything in physics. It's paramount to everything in any field that you're dealing with. Again, thank you all for bearing with me on this first show. It wasn't formatted to be any specific thing. Like I have a set show that I want to do every Sunday at 7 o'clock. That this is filling in for all intents and purposes. Just wanted to get it rolling. Make sure that every week we're doing something. And I have this set up now, but I want it to be focused on science for the Sunday show. So I want to bring other people in for some of this stuff. I need to bring in specific guests that I've already discussed stuff with. But I have to actually have a field specialist to discuss things with everybody, so that you will actually gain something from it rather than just me sitting here talking all day. And I my bad. I also want to encourage anybody that has any suggestions on what they want to talk about with philosophy or science, what subject, anything that you all are actually interested in every week. let me know. If I don't do it in this live stream, on a Sunday live stream, there will be other live streams throughout the week. So I've got one guest that was talking about coming on at some point this week. It will be before next Sunday. So again, Sunday shows I want to reserve for science discussions, and anything else can be done on any day of the week. But from here on out, it will be stuff about philosophy, science, uh, more on the scientific side, but where philosophy is relevant. Um, I want to get into mathematics, etc., where it applies to some of the physics work. Um, it will be baby steps. I don't want to throw 1,000 things at everybody, and I want to make sure that it's stuff that the audience wants to discuss. I don't want to just randomly wing it all the time. So Sundays, 7 p.m., there will be a science stream every week. And then there will be some random shows in between for now, with a more scheduled routine protocol sort of set up over the next couple of weeks. But I have to get the guests first. I have to make sure that I have people in solid time slots where we can come together and actually have a discussion in front of everybody and do this in a more routine sort of way. But either way, I appreciate everybody that's been tuning in. If you have any comments, feel free. If you want to give me money, you can't. And I will talk to you here soon. It will be before next Sunday. I'm out.